with us Mickey Rosenfeld, the foreign media spokesperson of the Israeli police. Mickey, the microphone is yours, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning here from Ashkelon. The Israeli police are continuing heightened security all across the country. We've seen over the last almost 48 hours more than 900 rockets that have been fired into Israel, into populated areas. We've seen women, children and families taking care in order to go inside those security zones and stay safe. We've had more than 300 rockets that have landed inside the cities, inside the populated areas. And unfortunately, until now, if we look at the numbers and the people that have been injured and killed, we've had 5 Israelis who were killed in the different sites as a result of those rockets from the Hamas being fired directly into the different cities. We saw for the first time yesterday rockets that were fired deep into the heart of Israel. We're fully coordinating with the IDF in order to be ready, if necessary, for further rockets. But as we can see, everything is happening in waves. We saw a barrage of rockets, more than 100 rockets at a time. So we realize that the situation is serious and the threats of the Hamas is ongoing. If we're looking ahead over to the next few days, security assessments are being made. At the same time, as we've been dealing with the rockets that have been landing, we're also preventing terrorist attacks from taking place, both inside Jerusalem, as well as in the area of Judea and Samaria towards the end of the Ramadan festival, which is continuing for another day or two. As we're speaking right now, we can still hear explosions in the background as the IDF is dealing with a major incident which is taking place less than 5 kilometers from where we are at the moment in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Over the last 24 to 48 hours, Israeli National Police units have been mobilized also in different areas to deal with large-scale riots that have taken place by thousands of Israeli Arabs from the north, from the area of Accra, the city in the north, as well as in the central district, Wadi Ara, Ramle, Lod, and all the way down south to the area of Rahat, south of Beersheba, where we've made over 150 arrests of suspects who have targeted Israelis, burnt vehicles, burnt synagogues, and have tried and attempted to kill our police officers. As of now, the city of Lod has been confirmed as a closed emergency city, which is something which is the first time has been decided upon by the government in order to make sure that we take law and order into our hands and prevent anyone from being killed there. As of now, hundreds of people have been arrested and police operations and activities are continuing both down south where we are now, as well as dealing with riots and public order around the central part of Israel.
Okay, any questions? Yes, please.
Noah Smith, NBC. Mickey, can you contextualize the unrest in Lod in particular compared to, for instance, 2000 or in other instances of rioting, I guess?
For more than 2 decades, we haven't dealt with such major incidents that have taken place, such as burning synagogues, attempting to literally pogrom people in the different areas all across the different towns within the Israeli Arab communities. We're also called upon the Israeli Arab communities to speak closely with our police officers to try and contain and deal with the situation. But on the ground, unfortunately, the situation is very different. This is the first time we've seen local residents using weapons as well, opening fire, and our response from our units has been also using live fire in order to prevent anyone from being killed. The situation is very dangerous on the ground, and that is why the city of Lod itself is considered to be a closed area. You can't go in and you can't go out. But what is so significant is the fact that even yesterday in the city of Lod, 1 rocket landed inside the city, and unfortunately both a father and daughter were killed inside the city.
Any other questions?
Times of Israel. Did the police make any mistakes in the weeks leading up to this that you guys will admit or recognize?
We saw over the last few weeks during the beginning of Ramadan tensions in Jerusalem. Police were prepared and mobilized in Jerusalem in order to prevent the disturbances, but unfortunately local Israeli Arab residents were involved. Police units responded by only using non-lethal weapons there, but unfortunately we saw that the Hamas taking their initiative and firing rockets inside the heart of Israel. That happened 2 days ago at 6 o'clock, and therefore things shifted and changed very quickly, and that is why coordination is taking place both here in Ashkelon, Ashdod, down south where the more serious issues are being dealt with, as well as of course the situation in Jerusalem towards the end of the Ramadan over the next 24 hours.
Last question, Mark, please.
What do you think is the connection between the rocket attacks and the riots we have in the street? And do you think that the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank also plays a role in it? Because we're talking about Jihad Islami and we're talking about Hamas. Do you think the Fatah also plays a role in this?
There's no doubt that during the period of COVID-19, the situation was relatively calm. We have to go back a few weeks, but what is taking place and what has happened is that there were a number of initiatives by different political factions, both inside Jerusalem, that tried to use and spark off the violence, also in Sheikh Jarrah, as well as in Jerusalem and Ramadan. And unfortunately, the Hamas has used that as a trigger in order to set off and take the opportunity to target Israel in all of the different areas, both down south as well as in the central part of Israel and Tel Aviv.
Is it a surprise to the police that local Arabs are now involved to such an extent?
We've dealt with disturbances by Israeli local Arabs. That is something that on one hand we have to respond to. At the same time we have to deal and talk to the leaders to contain the violence. But that level and that scale, thousands of people in the streets, burning synagogues, attacking Israelis, burning vehicles, that is something that we didn't expect, and that is why at the moment hundreds of police officers are mobilized in all of the different areas to respond, if necessary, to this afternoon and this evening.
Last question, definitely.
Yes, Mickey Rosenfeld, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned that Jerusalem is expected to become a potential security hotspot within the next 24 hours. Can you explain a little bit more about that, and how long do you think the riots are going to continue there? And what's being done also by police?
Well, we know, based on intelligence, that towards the end of the Ramadan there are always tensions that have been felt, but you can see, and we're seeing that right now on the ground, dealing with an incident here in the Gaza area is more significant. Of course, there are connections between how that can have an influence on what is taking place in Jerusalem. In Jerusalem itself, we are allowing people to celebrate and take part in the last days of Ramadan, but at the same time, as soon as there's any outbreaks of violence, our units are there in order to respond. The police policy is to only respond to the level of violence that is taking place, and that is why we're only using, if necessary, non-lethal weapons and stun grenades in order to disperse and contain those riots as much as possible.
We thank you very much, Mickey Rosenthal. We'll let you go to do your job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.